So we're in our final parts of control flows, and we're in the function section. And the reality is functions, as said before, are basically a section in themselves. They are kind of like one of the most important parts of any programming language, and that includes Python. So basically in Python, the way that functions are formed are like this. We've got a def keyword here, and this defines a function. I've got a pre-built one actually, so I might even use that. But how it works is that def stands for definition, and then we put the name of the function, whatever we want to name the function. So here it is called my function, but if we were going to do something like say print hello world or say hello, we might call our function say hello. Now inside, so we've got our def keyword over here that's highlighted in the blue syntax. Then we've got our function name, whatever we wanted to name it. It should be something suitable and appropriate. We tend again to use lowercase and the snake case, so lowercase with the underscores, but that you don't have to do that. That's just kind of like a convention. And then there are a pair of parentheses, and these parentheses here are used for arguments that might go into the function. We won't mention those as yet, but finally at the end of it we've got this colon, and that's where the indentation happens. Remember that indentation is very important in Python. The convention is for 4 white spaces, and that determines the block of code. And we might want to return something back from the function, but we don't necessarily have to, and everything inside is part of the flow of the code. So that's effectively how functions work. It's really a top line overview. And we can put something into a function. So let's put something into a function like print hello world. And we can call our function quite simply like this by saying say hello. Now this isn't the most useful of functions, so let's call our function. This isn't the most useful of functions in the sense that all it's doing is printing hello world, so it's doing nothing else, and I've put in a couple of placeholders. So this is where all of your code would go. So put all of your code here. The only one other part to look at in functions that we just haven't spoken about, is we sort of like talked about everything in terms of the structure of the function, at least internally how it looks to ourselves, is this little piece here, which is called the doc string. The first string, and it's the one that's quoted in the 3 quotation marks, so it's either the single quotes or the double quotes. This is known as a doc string, and when we hover over the function, we actually see what the doc string says. So it's kind of like a nice description. So we want something descriptive of what the function is, and usually it'll be something like either a one-liner describing the function, and sometimes if we have arguments in functions, we haven't spoken about them yet, we'll speak about them in another session, but if we did, we might put something like the arguments, and what's going in, something goes here, and also maybe what it returns and then again a word, whatever we wanted to put in here, that's what's going to be returned. And this doc string here is what we actually see when we hover over it. So if we've noted and documented our function well, then when the user hovers over the function, they get something that's nice and descriptive. Here it says function, and we've seen this kind of thing when we're looking through other documentation of the inbuilt function. And if they're descriptive and nice, we see function, or we'd see method, which is a function inside a class. Then we see this definition, and I've kind of like ignored it until this point in time, but definition means that it's a function. Def means it's a function, it's a definition. Then we've got the function name, And we've got the format of the function as if it took arguments or not. In our case, we have no arguments in this particular one. And finally, we see what is returned back from the function. And here we're not returning anything back from the function. So it says none. This arrow is pointing to none. And we can actually change it in our function. So we can go here, I believe, and point to, where is it over there? Inside of the things over here, points to none. We can actually specify what it's going to return, but we might say, for example, it's going to return us a boolean, and this is like a type hint for the user. So if the user hovers over the function now to look at its definition, we're kind of like telling the user that you should be expecting to get a boolean back from this function. So maybe we want to return a true from this particular function, and if that was the case, we could actually call the function. Now let's just run our function, and it's like say hello, but we also see that true has come back, so we could assign a variable to it. For example, x equals say hello, and we get this say hello that gets run, and then we could sort of like print x, which is actually what has been returned. Now here again, we're doing no computations, and we're just showing that we can return a value back from a function. So this is the general outlook and how structure of how a function actually works. There's a reasonable amount to it, but it's relatively simplistic and extremely helpful where a function is used to separate blocks of code and also to remove repetition. That's a very common case because there'll be lots of things where like large blocks of code that you want to repeat. Well, here now we can call our function as many times as we like. Say hello, we can keep on calling it. Say hello again. So we can call our function many times. We get this hello world loads of times. We can get lots of answers back as well. We can get true at the end of it. So just this is just an overview, a very simplistic view of how functions work in Python.